The underworld of Dublin unveiled, the true story of the Westies gang. What if the shadows of organised crime loomed larger than life over your neighbourhood, fuelled by the illicit profits of narcotics, spreading chaos and peril at every turn? Since the early 2000s, residents of West Dublin have grappled with this daunting reality. At the centre of this turmoil stands the notorious Westies gang, whose enduring legacy continues to cast a dark shadow over the area. From the chilling reign of Coates and Suggs to their mysterious disappearance, fiery encounters and the emergence of figures like Mr. Flashy, the story of the Westies gang remains a thrilling saga. Join me as we delve into the heart of these gripping narratives, exploring the intertwining webs of violence, power struggles and the relentless pursuit of control that have left communities in turmoil. Who were the Westies? Unravelling the origins of one of Dublin's most notorious gangs. Where did the tumultuous tale of the Westies begin, setting the stage for over 2 decades of mayhem and chaos? Based in the Dublin suburb of Blanchardstown, the Westies controlled a massive narcotics empire in the late 1990s and early years of 2000. Their grip on power was unyielding, but what was the driving force behind such a force? Extreme violence bordering on legendary. Despite the downfall of their top brass, some getting killed, incarcerated or dying, remnants of the Westies still linger, haunting the streets and posing a challenge for law enforcement. Violence, like a persistent shadow, refuses to fade away once it takes root in an area. Unfortunately, that has been the case for West Dublin. The Westies weren't just your average gang. Their reputation for brutality and extreme violence was unmatched. No one was exempt from their wrath. Even the slightest transgression could lead to horrific consequences. Can you imagine living in fear of crossing paths with these modern-day tyrants? Meet Shane Coates and Stephen Sugg, the faces behind the terror. Despite Coates' medical condition requiring a colostomy bag, his menacing aura remained undiminished. His penchant for cruelty knew no bounds, making him a figure to be feared by all who dared to oppose him. And Sugg? Well, let's just say sadism ran deep in his veins, relishing the suffering of their victims. According to a retired Garda, cited by the paper The Irish Independent, these guys could go from being calm to high-order violence like the flick of a switch. They were real psychopaths. Can you fathom the level of terror they instilled in the community? Their reign of terror wasn't confined to the shadows. They ran a campaign of terror in the sprawling estates of Corduff, Hartstown, Mulhuddart and Closilla. What's more, their punishments didn't discriminate. Everyone, woman or man, could be the victim of their wrath, and in the most egregious ways possible. Criminal rivals stayed out of their way. Those who didn't were taken out like Pascal Boland, or attempted to be taken out like Jeffrey Mitchell. Another execution, among many, was of a narcotic leader, Paul Ryan, whose body was found in a county Orphaley field. This kind of violence couldn't go unnoticed for long. The Westies became prime targets of law enforcement, prompting a major crackdown in late 2001. But this didn't seem to be a problem for them. Even with charges piling up and contraband seized, the gang seemed untouchable. They even staked out the homes of a senior detective working on their case. Nobody wanted to give evidence against the crime bosses, but the Garda were undeterred, launching a special task force to dismantle their empire. At that time, they were in the police's radar for a spate of lorry hijackings, in which massive amounts of cigarettes and designer clothing were stolen. In 2003, the tide began to turn. The Criminal Assets Bureau slapped Coates with a hefty €125,000 bill, while Sugg faced a bill of €150,000, and had convictions for assault, burglary and armed robbery by that time. Did the tides turn? The downfall of Coates and Sugg. So, As we reflect on the rise and fall of the Westies, we're left with a haunting question. How could such a reign of terror grip a community for so long? And is it even possible to finally break free from its clutches? For Coates and Sugg, tables were turning on them. Their actions were finally catching up with them. Both law enforcement and their rivals were hot on their trail. In 2003, Coates was ambushed by armed officers at a safe house in County Cavan. There was also a shootout with undercover Garda, resulting in injuries for Coates, but he still managed to escape to Spain, where he joined Sugg. Sugg had already left the country earlier that year following an altercation with the notorious narcotic dealer brothers Andrew Madster and Mark Glennon, who were also key figures in the Westies gang. Notably, Coates, Sugg and the other Glennon brothers were the leading members of the Westies. However, the alliance between the Glennon brothers and the Westies began to crumble, leading to intense competition in the underworld. Such alliances often prove fragile, and tensions can escalate when they dissolve. Bernard, Sugg's brother, fell victim to the Glennons in August 2003, leaving Sugg seeking retribution. But before he could act on any such plan, calamity hit the crime duo. Fate intervened in a surprising turn of events that shook the criminal underworld in Spain. Before we delve into this saga, let's backtrack to another setback for Coates. Soon after he fled Ireland, the Irish Republican Army, the freaking IRA, along with the rival gang, condemned him to death. The Irish Mirror cited a source stating, "He's a dead man walking." Some of his former associates and the IRA want his head. Coates had 16 previous convictions for armed robbery, burglary, assault and firearm offences by then. Things were definitely not looking good for Coates, were they? Returning to the story of Coates and Suggs in Spain, their time abroad was marked by attempts to establish a smuggling route from Spain to Ireland. Habitual of their violent ways, they resorted to intimidation tactics, which drew the ire of rival gangs. The pair had no idea how dire the consequences of this ire would be. The crime duo went missing in January 2004. They left their homes in Torrevieja, Alicante, and told their partners they were going out for an hour, but they never came back, leaving many people pondering their mysterious disappearance. The Spanish police suspected a dispute over a consignment of narcotics valued at €2.5 million, while others speculated they were lured into a trap under the guise of a lucrative deal. Some even entertained the notion of their demise, while others suspected it to be a hoax to evade law enforcement. This skepticism underscores the fear and uncertainty that the Westies gang instilled in the community for over 6 years, leaving behind a legacy of unease. Nevertheless, their families suspected the worst. Having no one to turn to, they approached an intermediary to contact the killers in hopes of locating the bodies of Coates and Suggs. According to the Irish Mirror, their families even offered a cash reward to the killers for identifying the graves. The reward was rumoured to be in the tens of thousands of euro. Unfortunately, the money intended for the reward was confiscated from Westies associates at Dublin Airport. In July 2006, the skeletal remains of Coates and Sugg were discovered buried in concrete beneath a warehouse in an industrial estate near Alicante, Spain. The newspapers and Spanish police reported that the perpetrators had gone to great lengths to conceal their bodies. They had dug a 6-foot grave in a section of concrete and dumped the men's bodies before covering the grave again with concrete. Coates and Sugg started working with this gang in late 2003 or early 2004, after leaving Ireland to source narcotics from Spain and supply them to their gang. However, they started to muscle in the new turf, which didn't sit well with that Irish gang. Both Irish and Spanish authorities believed that a gang led by a fingerless criminal operating in Torrevieja, Alicante, was responsible for their deaths. Details about the actual culprit behind the attack will be disclosed later in the video. Coates and Sugg had began working with this gang in late 2003 or early 2004 after leaving Ireland to procure narcotics from Spain and supply them to their gang. However, their attempts to assert control in the new territory clashed with the interests of the Irish gang, leading to tensions. The individual behind the elimination of the crime bosses was revealed to be the infamous Tony Armstrong, acting on behalf of the jailed Irish gangster John Gilligan. Armstrong's involvement shed light on the intricate web of gangland alliances and rivalries. John Gilligan doesn't need any introduction to the underworld. Even behind bars, he was pulling the strings of the gangland through his minions. An intriguing aspect of this story is the divergent path taken by Shane Coates' brother, Adam Coates. Unlike his brother, Adam pursued a career in the film industry as a screenwriter. He co-wrote a gangland series called Darklands, featuring the story of his brother and other gangsters. Adam's decision to channel his talents into a creative pursuit highlights the power of individual choice in steering away from a life of crime. He aimed to depict the harsh realities of gang life in Darklands, emphasising that it is far from glamorous, in hopes of dissuading youth from following a similar path. According to him, he could have easily been drawn into a life of crime if his passion for movies hadn't intervened. What unfolded in Spain after the Titans' departure? What did the demise of these two crime bosses signify for the Westies gang? Did it mark the end of their activities, with law enforcement hot on their trail, or did the gang members manage to sustain their operations despite the obstacles? While the Gardaí conducted search operations on gang members, their illicit endeavours persisted unabated. With their leaders absent, members formed new alliances, whilst others defected to join different criminal outfits. However, the spectre of violence and chaos associated with this gang endures as its lasting legacy. Coming back to our story back in Ireland, the saga continued with two childhood friends, Jason J. O'Connor and David Gully Goulding, who grew up together and joined the Westies gang as partners in crime. Initially, they gained notoriety as prolific car thieves. However, their relationship soured over time, descending into bitter enmity. The Gardaí grew concerned about a potential gangland war erupting between them, and indeed, it did. What appeared to be the catalyst for conflict was a dispute that led to the gang's fragmentation. O'Connor and Goulding had aligned themselves with another influential figure in the underworld, David Babyface Lindsay, a Baldoyle-based illicit trader. In the wake of Coates and Sugg's departure, a power vacuum emerged in Dublin's criminal landscape, sparking turf wars. A feud soon erupted over money between Lindsay's Coolock-based gang and the Glennon brothers, who had parted ways with the Westies and facilitated Sugg's exit from the country. During this feud, O'Connor sided with the Glennons, while Goulding aligned himself with Babyface. Tensions escalated, culminating in Lindsay orchestrating a brutal attack on O'Connor in his own home. O'Connor, in turn, accused Goulding of orchestrating the assault. In 2005, the Glennon brothers met their demise, followed by Lindsay in 2008, yet the animosity between the former friends persisted. The perceived betrayal by Goulding inevitably led to retaliation, sparking a cycle of violence. Armed detectives were deployed in top-secret operations to safeguard the key players amidst a flurry of death threats. Interestingly, unlike their Westies predecessors and numerous crime bosses they had associated with, O'Connor and Goulding managed to survive to this day. Following the demise of the Glennons, Goulding aligned himself with the clan of Michael Micah Kelly, nicknamed the Panda by the media. Meanwhile, O'Connor became the trusted aide of a seasoned Clondalkin gangster who spent much of his time in Spain. The shifting loyalties didn't change the animosity between the two friends turned sworn enemies. In 2012, Goulding was ambushed and hit with 6 bullets in a targeted attack, allegedly orchestrated by associates of O'Connor. Miraculously, Goulding survived the assault, but his troubles were far from over. He was on the run from the authorities, but not anymore. While being treated for his injuries in the hospital, he was under close surveillance by the Gardaí. However, Goulding managed to evade custody once again with the help of 3 associates, this time with audacity. His associates pepper-sprayed and assaulted uniformed officers guarding the hospital. This reckless act was not the only instance of Goulding's aggression towards law enforcement. Despite his efforts to evade arrest, Goulding's luck eventually ran out. 2 weeks later, whilst attempting to confront O'Connor near Dublin Airport, he was apprehended. Subsequently, he he was handed a 3.5-year sentence for 2 burglaries committed in 2005. In addition to their personal feud, both individuals were involved in other criminal clashes within the underworld. In 2012, O'Connor suffered a severe injury, losing 2 fingers in an attack allegedly orchestrated by members of the real IRA, acting under the direction of their leader, Alan Ryan. Although one finger was recovered and reattached, the other remained missing. O'Connor refrained from identifying his assailants, but it was later revealed that Alan Ryan was responsible for the attack. Despite Ryan's subsequent elimination, O'Connor was not implicated in the high-profile case. However, O'Connor found himself under suspicion in connection with the elimination of Lithuanian crime boss Gintaras Zelvis in 2013. Although he was arrested in connection with the incident, he was eventually released without charge. After Goulding's release from prison in 2015, the long-standing turf war between O'Connor and Goulding reignited with renewed vigour. Tragically, innocent lives were caught in the crossfire in 2015. A botched hit attempt at O'Connor resulted in the death of Keith Walker, a father of 2, in a case of mistaken identity. The attack, bearing all the hallmarks of Goulding's violent tendencies, occurred shortly after his release from prison. O'Connor announced war on his rivals in a foul-mouthed tirade to the Irish Sun. "I'll tell you a story. War in Blanchardstown. Dead. Stone dead. They won't see the end of the week." This declaration of war put the Garda on high alert, anticipating further fallout from the bitter feud unfolding on the streets of West Dublin. Violent incidents became recurrent as the feud persisted. Goulding versus O'Connor. Was peace an unattainable dream for Dublin? Did you know there was another player in the bitter feud between the 2 childhood friends turned rivals? I have divulged the story of one Goulding brother who was O'Connor's best friend. The other Goulding brother, Daniel's path, wasn't different from his brother's. He was an active part of the narcotics underworld. In 2009 he was arrested for narcotics-related offences, while David faced charges for witness interference. Daniel also played a role in the ongoing feud with his brother's best friend. Both brothers were apprehended in December 2004 for an attack on the home of Charlie Buckethead Russell, who had ties with the Glennons. Following their release, they were targeted in a retaliatory attack, but no charges were filed due to a lack of evidence. Daniel faced legal trouble again in 2009, as mentioned earlier, and he continued to be involved in orchestrating attacks against O'Connor. However, the feud subsided temporarily when O'Connor was sentenced to 3 years in prison in 2019 for assault and threats against Gardaí. His release in 2021 reignited concerns for the safety of the Goulding brothers. The event affected Daniel profusely as he suffered from paranoia. His paranoia escalated into an alarming incident where he attacked 2 Gardaí detectives, causing non-life-threatening injuries. He pleaded guilty to attempted murder and was sentenced to 18 years in prison. Despite consideration for a life sentence, the judge took into account Daniel's mental illness. The court was told that he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and was experiencing a psychotic episode at the time of the incident. The escalation of violence stemming from Daniel Goulding's paranoid actions and subsequent attack on law enforcement officers vividly illustrates the devastating consequences of untreated mental illness with criminal contexts. Goulding's untreated condition not only fueled his increasingly erratic behaviour, but also amplified the risks inherent from his access to firearms. Access to weapons for individuals struggling with untreated mental illness poses an acute risk not only to law enforcement officers, but also to innocent civilians. In Goulding's case, his paranoid delusions culminated in a violent confrontation with police officers, placing their lives in jeopardy. The use of weapons in such situations magnifies the potential for catastrophic outcomes, heightening the danger not only to law enforcement personnel, but also to bystanders caught in the crossfire. However, the intricate saga of this feud doesn't conclude here. Originating from the conflict between Coates and Sugg versus the Glennon brothers, the feud evolved into a confrontation between O'Connor and the Goulding brothers. Yet, these factions were not the sole participants in the ongoing strife. The feud continued to drag more actors into it. More actors joined the feud with Kinahan links. What's next in the Westies saga? How do the power dynamics unfold when new players challenge established gangs in Dublin's underworld? What was happening in the underworld of West Dublin was a fierce competition amongst a magnitude of gang figures vying for control over Blanchardstown and other territories engaged in illicit trade, igniting a power struggle. The emergence of a Blanchardstown mob seeking to assert its dominance and challenge the established gangs further fueled the discord. The newly emerged mob clashed with the legacy gangs to claim space in the arena of illicit trade. Unwilling to yield, the Westies gang members clashed with the newcomers, igniting fierce confrontations. However, this gripping saga escalated further with a tumultuous event that shook the streets of Dublin further. Caught in the crossfire of this turf war was a shadowy figure, a titan of the criminal realm, renowned for orchestrating a sprawling syndicate with ties reaching the echelons of the Kinhannon cartel. Operating with his own notorious faction known as the Gucci Gang, Mr. Flashy emerged as a key player in this turf war. His crime outfit comprised 30 members and had ties with the notorious Kinhannon cartel. Flashy drew his considerable weight behind the embattled remnants of the Westies gang. With alliances shifting and tensions mounting, the stage was set for a showdown of epic proportions in the streets of Blanchardstown. While leading the Gucci gang, he became a notable figure in the Westies as well. The involvement of a key Kinhannon associate didn't bode well for the peace of the area. This was evident in 2019 when shots were fired at 2 homes in the Corduff area, instilling fear among local residents. But that was just the beginning of a series of escalating violent incidents. In the following months, the conflict reached a boiling point when a school had to be placed under lockdown due to a violent altercation connected to the same turf war. It was a botched hit, fortunately resulting in no injuries. However, the discovered weapon, stashed just a few yards from the school, was traced to Mr. Flashy. This attack had the Westies written all over it. In the ensuing years, a barrage of shootings, arson attacks, and even assaults on rivals' girlfriends unfolded, marking one of Ireland's most sensational gangland wars in recent memory. The conflict that persists to this day. And this isn't the sole turf war engulfing the region. It seems everyone is embroiled in some form of conflict with someone. But returning to the Westies, Mr. Flashy and the Blanchardstown mob vying for control of the illicit trade in the area, the feud traces its origin to the fragmentation of the Dublin gang into 2 family-based factions, as reported by the Irish Times. The conflict escalated and drew public attention in 2023, on Christmas Eve in Dublin at the popular family restaurant Brown's Steakhouse. Laughter and conversation filled the air until 26-year-old thug Tristan Sherry burst through the door, targeting the family with a hail of bullets. The festive atmosphere instantly turned chaotic as patrons scrambled for cover, seeking refuge under tables, while some suffered injuries in the commotion. Amidst the mayhem, Sherry, targeting a rival, found himself brutally assaulted by multiple assailants and succumbed to his injuries on the spot. His associate, witnessing the onslaught, fled the incident. Later, it turned out that the attack's victim, the 47-year-old victim, was Mr. Hennessy Sr. He had attempted to disarm the assailant but was struck during the altercation. He died 11 days after the incident. He was facing a money laundering trial this year. Both Sherry and his target had prior run-ins with the law for narcotics-related offences. Sherry had previously orchestrated a hit in 2019, right at the onset of the Corduff feud. The targeted father was associated with Mr. Flashy's gang, but split after his associates had a dispute with Flashy. The father-son duo were senior members of the Blanchardstown mob. They boast a history marred by multiple convictions for violent offences and recurrent stints behind bars. Adding to the dismay of this episode is the evident lack of organisation and foresight on Sherry's part, underscoring his brute strength but glaring lack of strategic acumen. His lack of planning put many innocent lives in danger. While the Gardaí tried to identify the culprits for the murder of Sherry and the whereabouts of his associate, the entire episode sheds light on the callousness and disregard for innocent lives on the part of the gangsters. The school incident and the shootout in the residential area all point to the same thing, that the gangs do not care about who gets caught in the crossfire. Who is enigmatic Mr. Flashy, a Kinhannon ally and top dog in Irish illicit trade? Now, let's delve into the enigmatic persona of Mr. Flashy and unravel his story. As the cousin of Daniel Kinhannon's lieutenant, he was intricately connected to the Kinhannon cartel's operations in West Dublin. Despite hailing from a decent family background, Mr. Flashy was drawn into the world of gangland through his association with his cousin. His emergence onto the crime scene in 2015 marked the beginning of his ascent as an integral Kinhannon associate, actively embroiled in the infamous Kinhannon-Hutch feud. He gained notoriety for his role in eliminating or expelling numerous Hutch gang members, including David SOS Mulvey, who is currently incarcerated. Known for flaunting images of extravagant holidays and lavish nights out at upscale bars and nightclubs on social media, Mr. Flashy garnered a significant following online, further fueling his popularity. By 2017 he had cemented his position as a prominent figure, the top dog, on the northern side of Dublin, with reports suggesting he was earning a staggering £22,000 a week, prompting close monitoring by the Gardaí. However, his notoriety extended beyond his social media presence, with a string of criminal activities linked to him over the years. While initially associated with a dispute, Mr. Flashy soon found himself at the centre of escalating violence. The feud experienced a temporary lull during the COVID-19 pandemic, but reignited in early 2021 when a member of the Blanchardstown mob stole Mr. Flashy's French bulldog and posted a video on TikTok, sparking renewed hostilities. Engaged in multiple conflicts simultaneously, Mr. Flashy faced mounting pressure as his adversaries banded together to eliminate him. Forced into hiding to evade numerous attempts on his life orchestrated by rival gangs, Mr. Flashy navigated a perilous landscape fraught with danger and betrayal. Amidst the turmoil, Mr. Flashy faced multiple attempts on his life, highlighting the perilous nature of his existence. His mother's home became the target of a firebombing, followed by a brazen daylight attack on the taxi he was travelling in, which came under a hail of bullets. Miraculously escaping unscathed, Mr. Flashy defiantly posted a video on social media shortly afterwards, showcasing himself riding a jet ski. In a startling incident captured on video in August 2022, Mr. Flashy and his associates engaged in a violent altercation with three men in the streets. Brandishing a pitchfork while shirtless, he managed to fend off the assailants, narrowly avoiding a potentially fatal outcome. Fearing for his safety, Mr. Flashy fled to Costa del Sol in Spain, seeking refuge from the escalating violence. However, his efforts to evade danger proved futile, as an armed gang stormed the premises of his associate in Marbella, where he was believed to be staying. Subsequently, he reportedly sought sanctuary in Dubai, before ultimately returning to Dublin to reclaim his territory. The Brown Steakhouse incident was viewed as his bold declaration of returning to power and exacting revenge on his adversaries. Yet, before his enemies could act, law enforcement intervened and apprehended him in January 2024 as part of an investigation into a firearms seizure and the discovery of €47,000 in cash dating back 2 years. While the outcome of the investigation remains pending, Mr. Flashy's arrest raises questions about the future trajectory of the ongoing violence plaguing the Irish capital. While the outcome of this probe is yet to be seen, the ongoing spate of violence, dating back to the 2000s, through various gang wars, underscores the challenges faced by law enforcement in curbing such activities. It serves as a stark reminder of the pervasive influence of organised crime and the dangers law enforcement officials endure to maintain law and order in the city. The arrest of Mr. Flashy raises critical questions about the future trajectory of violence in the Irish capital. Will his apprehension put an end to the rampant violence, or will it merely be a temporary reprieve? These questions are pivotal for the security and well-being of Irish citizens, highlighting the urgent need for effective measures to combat organised crime. Moreover, it's crucial to acknowledge the ease with which individuals can stray down the wrong path and become entrenched in a life of crime. Disenchanting the youth about the allure of criminal activities is crucial, as emphasised by Adam Coates, who aptly stated,